No, sir, I don't got no bodies. Don't put me in that conversation in any type of situation. Don't troll with it. Don't rap about it. Don't even speak on it. As Boosie just got a very light sentence in the feds, and I say beating the feds because they wanted prison time from him, but he was able to walk it down.
I want to speak on something right quick. I ain't siding with Glorilla. I ain't siding with Brorilla. But I do want to say,
Pooh Shiesty dropped a post on Instagram that had the whole hip-hop scene spinning, and people claim Boosie reacted in a way nobody expected. Pooh Shiesty put up a picture with the caption, "Only rapper that has more bodies than me is Lil Boosie," and the reaction was instant drama. What came after wasn't regular rap tension. Folks started bringing up federal cases, street rumors, paid-off situations, and all kinds of wild claims. People online kept throwing around stories about a teenage hitter who supposedly couldn't sleep at night and old confessions linked to cases that locked grown men up for life. This wasn't light entertainment anymore, and the streets tuned in heavy. Lil Boosie's name stays big in rap for a reason. The Baton Rouge artist built his whole image on being real and staying true to what he came from. But behind the music, the story people talk about gets way darker. His name has long been linked to one of the most talked about homicide-for-hire accusations in hip-hop history. Some say it involved a long list of victims, a young associate named Marlo Mike, and statements that turned Louisiana upside down. Now Pooh Shiesty is out here trolling with claims about having more bodies than Boosie, and the internet is glued to the situation. But to even understand why this is dangerous talk and why people keep whispering that federal eyes might be watching, we gotta go back to what really had Boosie's name buzzing in the first place. So let's rewind the clock to the mid-2000s in Baton Rouge. At that time, the city was boiling with tension, and Boosie was working his way up the rap ladder while surrounded by people who were involved in things way beyond music. According to investigators and public testimony, folks painted a picture of Boosie as someone who wasn't just rapping about the streets, but was close to people who were living in them heavily. That's where Marlo Mike entered the conversation. His real name is Michael Ng, and people claimed he was close to Boosie during that era. Rumors spread that he was acting as some type of enforcer, but legally nothing supports the idea of a minor carrying out homicides for a rapper. What did come out in court was a messy web of statements, accusations, and shifting stories. People said Boosie paid him to handle problems, but saying something doesn't make it fact, and a lot of those claims fell apart under real legal pressure. Either way, the streets grabbed the story and never let it go, turning it into one of the most repeated legends in Louisiana rap history. People weren't whispering about some small-time situation. They were talking about a full operation that they believed took multiple lives and shook Baton Rouge to the core. The connection between Boosie and Marlo Mike was described as a mix of loyalty, cash, and pressure. Folks said Marlo Mike viewed Boosie like a mentor, and that influence supposedly pulled him deeper into street business. At that time, the neighborhood already sensed something heavy was in the air, but nobody dared to speak on it. That's how the streets move. You stay silent or risk becoming part of the story. But things took a wild turn once investigators started revealing what they believed happened behind the scenes. Marlo Mike wasn't portrayed as some unshakable monster. He was a young man dealing with things way beyond what he could handle. Court testimony later claimed he struggled with what he was involved in. Witnesses said he had nights where he couldn't sleep, and people testified that he talked about being haunted by memories of the violence around him. That guilt kept building until he eventually broke under the pressure. According to official statements, Marlo Mike decided to walk into a police station and tell everything he knew. And this wasn't some halfway confession. Reports said he laid it all out, dropping names, places, and what he claimed were the reasons behind the hits. The most explosive part was when he pointed to Boosie, saying he was the one who allegedly called the shots and handed out the payments. Now let's get into these cases that prosecutors stacked up. Based on court documents and the testimony that came out, the slayings weren't random. They were described as targeted actions tied to beef, arguments, whispered disrespect, or street business turning sour. One of the most talked about victims was Terry Boyd, who was unalived in October 2009. That case became the centerpiece of Boosie's trial. Prosecutors claimed Boosie offered Marlo Mike around $2,800 to handle a dispute involving Boyd. Marcus Thomas was another name that surfaced. People said he had been speaking too freely, and prosecutors claimed Boosie wanted the situation handled for good. Then there was Chris Jackson, whose passings was described as a planned hit. In the courtroom, Marlo Mike claimed Boosie even gave him instructions on how it should go down. The list kept growing, with names like Daryl Milton, Michael Smith, and Kendrick Bishop being tied to what authorities called a coordinated operation. Every one of those victims had people who cared about them. Their lives were cut short over street tension mixed with rap spotlight, according to what the prosecution argued. But the wildest part is that all these details came crashing into the public before the full truth was ever agreed on. Some people believed every word. Others insisted the stories were twisted to tear Boosie down, and the streets still debate what really happened. According to the testimony tied to Marlo Mike, the claims against Boosie went far beyond simple street tension. The statements described a situation where Boosie wasn't just giving general orders. He was allegedly laying out the finer details about how certain moves should be carried out. Witnesses said he talked about what type of weapon should be used, the timing, and the best way to move without drawing attention. This wasn't painted as random chaos. It was described as a controlled and organized method that sounded more like strategy than impulse. People in court said Marlo Mike also claimed that each time something happened, Boosie handed him cash. Sometimes it was a few thousand, sometimes more, depending on who the target was said to be. For someone dealing with rough conditions in the streets, that kind of money could look like a whole new world. But while the cash came easy, peace of mind didn't. As time moved on, the weight of everything he said he was involved in started breaking him down. Court testimony described Marlo Mike dealing with heavy emotional fallout. Witnesses claimed he couldn't sleep, saying he had nightmares and woke up in cold sweats. They said he struggled to eat or stay focused, and the pressure crushed him to the point where he finally decided to walk into a police station and tell everything he knew. Investigators said he didn't hold back. He broke down each case, shared details, handed over information, and agreed to testify in open court. The streets called him a snitch, but according to what he told officials, he said he couldn't carry the guilt anymore. Lil Boosie's trial became one of the biggest courtroom moments hip-hop had seen. In May 2012, Boosie faced charges connected to the homicide of Terry Boyd. The prosecution brought out their main witness, Marlo Mike, now older and facing the consequences of everything tied to his name. His testimony had the room frozen. He spoke about what he said were Boosie's reasons for wanting Boyd gone, describing the situation as deep-rooted beef. He explained how he followed Boyd, waited, and then fired the shots. He even stated how much money he claimed Boosie paid afterward. According to his testimony, Boosie handed him around $2,800 and told him, "Good job." The defense fired back hard, saying Marlo Mike was twisting stories to save himself and cut time off his own sentence. They insisted he couldn't be trusted and that he was telling investigators whatever they wanted to hear. Boosie stood firm through the entire process, repeating that he had nothing to do with any slayings and that the accusations were false. The prosecution didn't walk into court relying only on what Marlo Mike said. They brought stacks of evidence they claimed backed up his story. Investigators showed phone records that placed communication between Boosie and Marlo Mike around key moments. They also presented financial documents showing cash moving at the same times the prosecutors said payments were made. On top of that, witnesses came forward saying they overheard conversations that lined up with the state's narrative. The courtroom felt tense from start to finish as the jury went back to deliberate. The whole rap world watched closely. Fans and critics waited to see if one of the culture's most talked about figures was about to go down for crime. After long hours, the jury reached a decision. They found Boosie not guilty of the first-degree homicide charge in the Terry Boyd case. When the announcement hit, Baton Rouge and the wider hip-hop community reacted instantly. Boosie walked out of that courtroom cleared of the charge, and people saw it as a major moment for him. But things didn't end on a clean note. While Boosie beat the crime accusation, Marlo Mike didn't escape the consequences tied to his own actions. He was convicted of multiple slayings and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. At only 22, his future was locked away for good. Meanwhile, families connected to some of the other cases never saw full justice. Even though Marlo Mike admitted involvement in around 15 unalivings, the system only managed to prosecute a portion of them, leaving many families without answers or closure. The investigation opened the curtain on a darker side of Baton Rouge's street scene, where rumors of homicide for hire floated around the edges of the music world. Federal authorities started digging deeper, trying to understand the connection between rising artists, neighborhood crews, and acts of violence. What they believed they found was a pattern where certain rappers were using younger street members to handle dangerous situations, offering money or status in return. Witnesses in court gave descriptions of a culture built on fear, pressure, and loyalty, taken to extremes. They spoke about how being disloyal or crossing the wrong person could lead to fatal consequences. The prosecution tried to frame the entire operation around Boosie, painting it as a criminal circle disguised as a rap movement. But outside the courtroom, opinions were divided. Some people saw Boosie as a man targeted by a system that didn't want to see him win. Others believed he was someone who allegedly used his influence to push younger people into violent paths while he stayed protected. The truth depended on who you asked, and the debate never really faded. The conversation around this case wasn't light. It ran through barbershops, social media threads, and every hip-hop forum you can think of. Boosie's family stood by him every step of the way during the trial. His mother, his kids, and his day one supporters never backed down from saying he was innocent. They insisted he was being singled out because of his success and the way his music shook the industry. They argued the state was twisting his lyrics into something criminal and turning his art into evidence. By the time Boosie walked out of prison in 2014, he wasn't being released from a homicide case. He was serving time for substance charges that had stacked up during the chaos of his trial. And when he got out, Baton Rouge wasn't the same city he left. Law enforcement had tightened its grip. The homicide for hire rumors had reshaped the way people looked at the rap scene, and the streets felt colder. Meanwhile, Marlo Mike ended up in Angola State Penitentiary, one of the toughest prisons in the country. In rare interviews, he talked about feeling remorse, but the outcome couldn't be changed. Families were grieving, and his life was locked away for good. Fast forward to 2024, and suddenly Pooh Shiesty jumps into the spotlight with one Instagram post. He puts up a picture and throws a caption saying something like, "The only rapper that has more bodies than me is Lil Boosie." The moment it hit the timeline, people started dissecting it. Was he disrespecting Boosie? Was he playing around? Or was he trying to paint himself as someone with a violent past? Here's the thing about Pooh Shiesty. His name stays tied to serious charges. Every case he's been connected to involves gunplay or someone getting hurt. One incident that shook everything was the situation at King of Diamonds in Miami on May 30th, 2020. According to witnesses and security footage, an argument broke out during a packed night, and Pooh Shiesty allegedly pulled out a weapon. A security guard ended up shot and injured. This wasn't framed as a mistake or an accidental misfire. Investigators described it as a deliberate action during a heated moment in a crowded venue. Then came the Bay Harbor Islands case, which is what really turned federal eyes toward him. Authorities said the situation involved a shooting and a robbery tied to a street deal that went bad. Surveillance video and witness statements painted a chaotic picture. And this time, the feds stepped in because the violence crossed state lines and involved stolen goods, making it a federal matter. Pooh Shiesty wasn't just dealing with local charges anymore. His name was now sitting on the radar of agencies that don't back down. And with that one Instagram caption, people started wondering whether he was sparking a rivalry, making a joke, or speaking recklessly about something that could bring more heat his way. On October 9, 2020, prosecutors said Pooh Shiesty and his crew arranged what looked like a regular meetup to buy marijuana and high-end sneakers. But according to federal documents, the deal turned into a robbery. They claimed Pooh Shiesty and the people with him pulled out weapons, shots were fired, and one of the men there ended up hit in the hip. Surveillance cameras caught everything, giving investigators a clear look at what happened and who was involved. What made the case even wilder was the claim that Pooh Shiesty allegedly shot one of the victims in the backside and left him on the ground while the group drove off with the sneakers and weed. It wasn't some small confrontation. The victim had to be rushed to the hospital and needed surgery to recover. This wasn't viewed as a simple robbery. It was treated as an armed robbery with serious injury. The federal government stepped in quickly. They charged Pooh Shiesty with conspiracy related to firearms in connection with violent and substance-related crimes, plus discharging a weapon during a violent offense. These weren't light charges. They carried mandatory time, and when the feds bring a case, it usually means they already have the evidence lined up before the arrest even happens. In January 2022, Pooh Shiesty took a plea deal. He admitted guilt to one firearms conspiracy charge, and the court sentenced him to 63 months in federal prison. That's more than 5 years. He's serving his time now and isn't expected to be released until sometime in 2026. And even after release, he'll be on supervised monitoring, where any small violation could send him straight back behind bars. What keeps people talking is the pattern the courts described, the King of Diamonds situation, the Bay Harbor Islands case. Each one involved a weapon being pulled during heated moments. It painted a picture of someone who reacts fast and thinks later. So when he posted on Instagram acting like he had a high body count, a lot of people wondered if he was trying to hint at something real or just stirring the pot online. And then there's his music. In his track, FDO, First Day Out, Pooh Shiesty raps about sending people to handle his problems and paying them afterward. He says lines like, "I don't even gotta be there. I just send the addy in the back end." That's him using his music to talk about dropping an address and money to get situations handled for him. Whether he meant it literally or artistically, the line added more fuel to the public's curiosity about what he was trying to imply. That whole situation sounded similar to what people once claimed Boosie was involved in with Marlo Mike. And when the feds notice lyrics lining up with real cases, they pay attention. Pooh Shiesty is already doing federal time on firearm charges. So when he raps about sending people to handle problems and then hops on Instagram talking about having bodies, he's basically handing prosecutors opportunities they don't even have to work hard for. Anything that sounds like a confession can end up inside a courtroom one day. So when Pooh Shiesty threw that line about having more bodies than Boosie, nobody knew if he was trying to brag, trying to joke, or crossing into dangerous territory. Either way, the post pulled the whole internet in, and the streets started buzzing about how Boosie might react. According to people close to the situation, Boosie saw the post and didn't appreciate it at all. Some said he responded privately with something like, "Young boys don't know what they're talking about. They are playing with their freedom for Instagram likes." That quote can't be confirmed word for word, but those near him made it clear that he wasn't about to take the disrespect lightly, even if he refused to speak on it publicly. Boosie already lived through the kind of trial that can end a man's life. He spent years fighting accusations and dealing with the weight of a homicide case hanging over him. He knows the federal system doesn't play around, so there's no chance he's gonna step into a social media back and forth that could open the door to new problems. He understands exactly how fast things can go wrong if you start talking too loosely about violence. All of this points to a bigger issue inside hip-hop. Rappers are out here trying to compete over who's more dangerous, who has more bodies, who has more street credibility, and the whole thing turns into a cycle that destroys lives. It's not just music or online talk. People end up doing decades behind bars. Futures get wiped out over pride and pressure to keep up a certain image. Pooh Shiesty is only in his early 20s and already locked into serious federal time. Marlo Mike, now an adult, is serving life in prison for violence he committed after getting caught up in the wrong path at a young age. Boosie beat his case, but he paid with years of stress, stigma, and a fight that nearly cost him everything. These aren't fictional stories. These are men whose lives have been shaped and damaged by real choices. So when Pooh Shiesty goes online talking like he has bodies while he's still under heavy federal supervision, it shows just how disconnected some young artists have become from the real weight of their words. One post can bring the wrong attention, and one lyric can be enough to change the direction of a case. The feds stay watching everything. They look at every Instagram caption, listen to every track, and study every detail that could help them build a case. When someone publicly brags about violence or hints at homicides, they're basically handing prosecutors material they can flip into evidence. And we can't ignore the reality behind these stories. 15 people lost their lives in the case linked to Boosie's name. And when it comes to incidents connected to Pooh Shiesty, people have been hurt, lives have been disrupted, and families have dealt with the aftermath. These aren't just statistics. These are real people with loved ones who still feel the loss. Hip-hop has reached a point where a serious conversation is needed about the way violence gets glorified. Keeping it real matters, and authenticity has always been part of rap. But there's a line between sharing your past and bragging about active violence for attention. That line keeps getting crossed, and the consequences hit hard. Boosie has talked in interviews about regretting parts of his past. He's mentioned that the street life almost ruined everything for him, and said he's trying to guide his kids in a better direction. Whether people believe him or not, at least he acknowledges that choices come with heavy fallout. Pooh Shiesty, on the other hand, is still deep in the struggle. He's young, moves fast, and seems to be trapped in a cycle where the streets and the spotlight collide. Taking shots at Boosie online over body counts might get him attention, but that same attention can bring more charges, more time behind bars, or something even worse. So the question becomes, what now? Pooh Shiesty put out a bold caption that many people saw as a direct hit toward Boosie. Boosie, who people once claimed was tied to 15 slayings through Marlo Mike, supposedly responded by warning younger rappers about risking their freedom for likes. Whether the exact words are accurate or not, the message felt real. This whole situation shows how serious rap beef can get. It stops being entertainment when people end up passing. It stops being a joke when young men get pulled into violence and never come back from it. It stops being worth it when the price is life in prison or your life cut short. Marlo Mike said he confessed because the guilt was tearing him apart. Now he's spending the rest of his life behind bars, and the families of those victims still live with the loss. Pooh Shiesty is already serving federal time and still making posts that could add more years to his sentence or bring more heat his way. The streets are locked in on this whole situation, waiting to see what comes next. Nobody knows whether Pooh Shiesty will end up dealing with real consequences for that post, or if federal agents might decide to use his own words in a future case. People are also watching to see if Boosie ever decides to speak on it more directly, or if he keeps his distance to avoid bringing more heat onto himself. At this point, the only thing clear is that once you step into federal territory, the stakes get heavy, and both of these artists already know how real that pressure feels. That's the truth behind Pooh Shiesty taking a shot at Boosie. It's bigger than trolling, it's bigger than rap. It's dangerous, and it's a reminder that this culture can turn serious fast. Freedom isn't something to gamble with just to get attention online, and the clout some people chase ends up costing more than they expect. If you're still here watching, make sure you drop a comment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and I'll see you on the next one.